Hi, everyone. My name is Pastor Gatera from Minneapolis. I minister with the International Association for Refugees as a refugee consultant. This morning, we are going to share about shining in the ungodly and the toxic culture. On this, I took this from the book of Daniel, as I'm going to talk about the introduction of what I'm going to speak about. Daniel and his friends were taken they were taken from Babylon by the king Nebuchadnezzar in the 605 BC. That is the time when the king Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Israel, king of Judah. Then he took them as to the country, whereby he made them like people who was subdued to him and serving him. Then Daniel chapter 1 verse 6, it talks about the historical background of Daniel and his friend when they reach in Babylon, where they find that Babylonians, the lifestyle of Babylonians, and also the issue of worship, or they were conflicting with what Daniel and his friends, they were brought up in. Then in that way, they were really challenged to know how are they going to cope with different culture, different tradition, different beliefs, in line with their beliefs. So that is where I come up with the word here that shining in a culture where is toxic, and the culture which is really different from what you believe in. So Daniel chapter 1 up to 6, it talked about Daniel and his friends, how to live for God and thrive in the ungodly culture and toxic culture. So how did they manage to shine? How did they manage to change that country or the empire to believe and turn into their God? Then Daniel chapter 7 up to 12 is talking about the 4 visions Daniel had about his near future and the distant future. Of course, Daniel in chapter 7 and chapter 11, he received the 4 visions from God about what is going to happen and also what will happen in the future. So, but at this today, I am going to discuss the first part of the book of Daniel, which is chapter 1 up to 7, not in terms of vision and interpretation, but 3 main events which changed their lives and the lives of Babylonians empire forever, which I refer to as shining moment in a godly and toxic culture. So let us now look into the 3 main events which really changed Daniel and his friends, and also changes the empire of Babylon while they were there. So the first thing which is happened, Daniel and his friends, they had commitment to their purity for God. If you read Daniel chapter 1 verse 8, but Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself this way. So what happened when Daniel, as I started talking about introduction, and his friends, they reached in Babylon, then they found how the things were done were different. Then because they were committed to their God, so they were given food and other things to eat as Babylonian did. Normally, the culture of Babylonians, before eating food and whatever, they were sacrificing those stuff before their idols. And that was contrary to the beliefs and the way the children of Israel, they worshipped Yahweh. Then Daniel and his friend, they were able now to stand to say, yes, although we were here, but we are not going to compromise with what we believe, because it's different from the God whom we worshipped. Then Daniel and his friends, they decided not to defile themselves. That was really a foundational moment, which was all other things which came after were laying on that decision on that day. So what are now the implications of their decision? So in Daniel chapter 1, verse 17, we see how God responded on the decision they made. The Bible says, to these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and understanding of all kinds of literature, learning, and Daniel could understand visions and dreams of all kinds. So because they decided to respect God, to honor God, not to defile themselves, not to go contrary to what God himself intended to them, then God gave them favor. And God was with them. So here, the lesson we can learn from here in our context, if we set ourselves apart for God, he will shine through us wherever we are. As they set them aside, regardless the cost, which and what could happen, then the favor of God was upon them, and God was with him through all what they did. And God allowed them to shine and also be able to be brighter than other people who were there. So if we read again the book of 2 Timothy, verse 2 up to verse 21. So if anyone purify himself from anything dishonorable, he will be a special instrument set apart, useful to the master, prepared for every good work. So in this context, wherever we are, of course, we meet with different situations, which always we are subjected to the decision, either toward God or toward ourselves or other things. But the will of God is that always we should consider to keep ourselves pure, separate, so that God can use us for his own purpose. So my question on this one, do you set yourself apart for God's use in every circumstances? We meet with different circumstances, which is sometimes is not easy for us to do what? To stand. So my question, do you set yourself aside? So the second event which changed the life of Daniel and the life of Babylonians was their commitment to worship only the living God, no matter what. So in the book of Daniel, chapter 3, 17 up to 18, if we are thrown into the breathing finance, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hands. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of God you have set up. So the first event was dealing with their own life, their own commitment to be pure before God. Then the second test was like the commitment to God. Are they really going to commit themselves to God no matter what, to worship him no matter what? So that was the second test, which caused the change in that country. So after Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, they were now tested. Then they told the king, yes, king, you have authority. Yes, king, you are so powerful. But there is one thing which we will not accept or we will not obey. So we are not going to worship your idol. It doesn't care what you are going to do to us. And know that our God is able to help us, but remember also, even if he cannot, we assure you we are not going to bow, which means they were already determined of whatever might happen because of their faith. So then what were the implications after they took that decision? God did not leave them alone because they decided to stand on their side. So the implication was, therefore, I declared that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces and their house be turned into piles of rubble, for no other God can save in this way. So, which means after they stood, then the king and the others, they suggest all the means to convince them. Then they refused. They decided to throw them the fire. Then they saw how God intervened and he set them free. Then they realized that their God is powerful than what they thought, than the gods of Babylonians. Then they decided to submit to their gods. So in a life we are in, so many things will happen. Things will in our life, sometimes because of our need, sometimes because of other different things, in order for us to bow down or to change the course of our beliefs. But the question is, are we going to stand firm, or we are going to bow because of our need? Either in our workplaces, either in a financial status, either in our social issues which we are asked on a daily basis to be involved in, or the pressure even from media or other things which are different from what we believe in. So the question, are we going to bow or accept to follow those things because everyone is following the same way? So the lesson here is, God does not accept the reason that we may do something simply because everyone is doing it. Sometimes you may say, oh, because so and so is doing that, and there is no problem. So there is no immediate problem. Even that person who is doing is superior than me. Then let us do it. There is no problem. So God does not accept the reasoning that we may do something simply because everyone is doing it. So especially the situation, the culture we are living in different groups, different people, different culture, we have to understand what our God love, what our God like and dislike, and we stand with him if God is going to shine with us and change the society which is around us. If we are going to shine, we should diligently ask God to put a firm determination within our hearts to remain true to him and his word, regardless of the consequences. So always, sometimes there is consequences of standing firm on what you believe. You may be rejected, you may be ridiculed, and the people may see that you are not normal. But that is only the path that we should follow if we are going to shine within the community. If the community is going to turn toward us and also toward our God whom we believe in. Question, have you ever compromised in worshiping God when things got tough? Sometimes the things get tough, then you just say, okay, let me put Jesus aside. After I resolve my issue, I will pick him again, then move forward. So, sometimes because things they are getting, but God does not accept such. Yes, our God is a merciful God, but the consistency in our faith is what transforms the society and even ourselves. Not moving 1 mile, then you go back and you start afresh again. Tomorrow you move again, we start afresh. You cannot reach anywhere. We need the consistency on what we believe so that the people, God may transform us and also the society to be transformed. So this will lead us to that part, which is the test for the royalty. So here again, after Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, because of their stand, the king proclaimed that no one else in the country, in the empire, who will worship any other god than the God of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. So it did not stop there. They did not say, okay, these are the children of God. God is with them. Then they say, leave them alone. Let them continue worshiping God. Devil, use all other means in order to make sure they will submit on what was going on there. So now, when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room where the window opened toward Jerusalem. 3 times a day, he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he had done before. So I think this story is familiar. This is the time Daniel himself, they tried to find something to accuse him because the king uplifted him to the throne. He was the second to the king. Then they realized there is nothing else against Daniel they can find. Only they can find the reason in his God, because they knew even if they tell him stop praying, stop worshiping your God, he will never stop. He will continue. Then they realize, okay, that is where we can find something to tell the king, because the king worship another God and Daniel worship another God. So then after that, they tried to put the law, which will allow the king to persecute Daniel if we worship another God. So the Bible says here, after Daniel realized that the king has already signed the law, then he went and prayed as he has been doing. And surprisingly, according to the history, if at this moment, Daniel was almost like 90 years old. During this moment, according to the history, Daniel was almost 90 years old. Just imagine, since the time Daniel was a young boy, he prayed consistently until he was 90 years, doing the same thing. So then he did not fear them. He did not say, okay, the king is going to do ABCD. Daniel continued worshiping God as he used to. Then they went and told the king. So after king was told, nothing king could do because of the law. Because of the law, then the king said, okay, go and pick him, put him in the den of the lion. So they did so. But after that, the king did not sleep because he knew Daniel was a righteous man. He knew also his God, although he was not worshiping him, but he knew that Daniel has a very powerful God. Then the king did not sleep. So the first person who was influenced by Daniel was the king. He was the one that Daniel influenced than anybody else. Then Daniel was saved from the lion. Then from there, something extraordinary. The second decree was issued. The first decree was issued during the time of King Nebuchadnezzar, when Daniel and his friends refused to worship, to bow down to the idol. Then the second decree is issued by the next king in order to worship only God of Daniel. When he saw by Daniel standing firm and the God intervening and helping him, he realized there is no any other God who should be worshipped, only the God of Daniel. So sometimes we may do sometimes a shortcut, or sometimes we say you cut off the cross, you remain with half of it instead of using all the cross. So in order to save ourselves, but if we want God to manifest himself in your life, you have to stand, you have to go extra miles, you have to use it all the way you can, and where your strength are off, that is when God comes in and he manifests himself. So when he manifests himself to you and you see him, others also see him and being transformed as the king did after showing what God did. Then he decided to sign a decree for all the people of the nations to worship God of Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. So I issue a decree that in every part of my kingdom, people must fear and reverence the God of Daniel. For he is the living God and endures forever. His kingdom will not be destroyed. His dominion will never end. He rescues and he saves. He performs the signs and the wonders in heaven and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lion. So our stand in the society, even without speaking, means something different, sends a strong message to the community. Our standing preach or speaks much more than even our words from our mouth. So if we as believers, we are going to survive, we are going to change the society, we are going to shine, there is no other way, there is no shortcut. We must be loyal to our God through prayer, even through fasting, seeking him on our daily basis. Through that, God will reveal himself through us, and others who don't know him, they will learn from us that God whom we believe in is a living God. The culture we are living in is a military worshiping kind of culture, whereby they have different gods. Every tradition, every community, every nation in our country, some they have different gods. It's different way of worshiping. Only through God manifestation in our life, that is when the different from their gods and our God will be seen and realized. Then they will come toward us and our God. Then we will teach them how to worship God of heaven, who is the Lord of Jesus Christ. So the lesson here, the king decree did not cause Daniel to become timid and change his habit of praying. So they did not, he knew that the king was powerful. but he was not shaken about the king. So his window remained open toward Jerusalem once he stood, according to the Second Chronicles 6:21. So through the knew of the danger, he did not let anything keep from presenting his petition before God. He knew the danger of what he was doing, but he knew also that his God was beyond of anyone else or what was going on. He did not shut the door to hide himself. He let them understand that is praying as he has been doing, he's living God. So in our time also, we need people outside to see who we are, whom we worship, and our lifestyle itself also should speak about who we are. Our identity in Jesus Christ should be seen. Even if somebody comes in your community, ask, is there anybody who is a believer of Jesus Christ here? Then everyone will say, yes, this is the man, this is the woman in the society who believe in Jesus Christ, without mentioning your name. People have to know you by the lifestyle, by the way you speak, by the way you do things, by your stand on some compromising things which come up in the society, even between other people whom you fellowship with, so that through that they may see God intervening in your life and say, okay, this is the way things should be done, and this is the true God whom we must worship. So there is no substitution of seeking God continually in prayer in every circumstances if we are going to shine in darkness. There is nothing you can substitute with the prayer. There is nothing we can substitute with the time with God. There is nothing, if we want God to shine and manifest in your life, you can put before God. Jesus himself demonstrated that when Martha and Mary, he visited Martha and Mary. One, he was busy looking something to welcome Jesus. Then another one was busy on the feet of Jesus. Then Jesus was concerned about the one who was busy doing so much work instead of listening to Jesus first. And he recommended the one who listened to Jesus, said, he have chosen the right thing. So listening to God, listening to Jesus, that should be our priority before other things, even the ministry. We should listen much more to God than doing what we do, because that is where the strength comes in. That is where the wisdom, understanding, the vision of what we are doing comes in. The provision when we don't have enough to use the ministry, that is where everything comes from, on the knees. Abraham once said, on the mountain of God, God provides. So on the knees, that is where the provision of God comes in, because God is the source of everything. So what time do you spend with God daily in prayer? So every day, how much time each individual spend to hear from God? When you wake up going to work, how much time do you spend with God? In the evening back home, how much time do you spend with God? In the church, how much time? In the program? So because the time we spend with God will determine the God manifestation in your life. If you don't have time with God, then you may not expect God manifestation much more in your life. Lastly, as I conclude, shining in a toxic and ungodly culture we have to set ourselves aside pure for God use. God needs all of us to set aside for ourselves, to say yes to him. Here I am, God. Use me, change me. Yes, we have our weakness. We have different things which are restraining us. We try to move forward, but we are not able. But what God expects from us is to say, God, here I am. I am empty as an empty vessel. Use me, God. Put me whatever you need for me to serve you. Cleanse me. That is what God expects from us. He doesn't expect us to be perfect because we are still here on earth, but he expects us to surrender to him ourselves. Then he will put whatever he needs in ourselves. Then he will shine outside from us. Then the world will know. Then the second, another thing, we have to commit ourselves to worship God no matter what. So we may not have idols like that in Babylon, but what about our money? Do you put money first than God? What about our job? Do you put your job first than God? What about your husband? Do you put your husband first than, what about your wife? Do you put your wife ahead than God? What about your government? What about the leaders whom you admire? So, and any other thing which you put in the front of God, in order for God to have the first priority in your life, that one becomes an idol. So God wants to be first in your life. Wherever there is an opportunity to shine, an opportunity to present him, let him be first in every circumstances. Then God will shine in your life and shine to others. Lastly, and be loyal to God in spending enough time with him in prayer. God wants to hear from us. God wants us to express ourselves to him. As a child expresses himself to his mother and father, the same time God wants us to express ourselves to him. The child always, if a parent has 3 or 5 children, a child who is always near to the parent, always asking the parent question, always asking the parent advice, always go outside when the parents need to send them somewhere. That parent, he has a really that kid, he has a great value than any other kid who goes away. Then the parents, they always try to find him. So let us meet near to God so that God may use us to transform ourselves, our families, our society, and even the world at large. And furthermore, we will have also the reward when the Lord Jesus will come back. He will say, here the reward, because you have been a faithful servant of the word. So may God bless you as you meditate on this word. Amen.